All right, welcome to today's Explainer. We are diving into something absolutely wild today. We're unlocking one of the most fascinating, mind-bending, and honestly tightly guarded psychological secrets of the 20th century. I mean, just think about this. For decades, the legendary psychoanalyst Carl Jung essentially hid a magical tome in a vault. He kept a massive private manuscript completely hidden from the world. We're talking about a book filled with terrifying visions, ancient myths, and a forgotten god that he truly believed was quietly pulling the strings of the modern world. So get ready, because we are going to explore the very depths of your own unconscious mind as we decode Jung's ultimate masterpiece. Listen to this quote. Jung wrote, "To worship him means death. Not to resist him means liberation." Now, that is not just abstract poetry. That was a very grave, very real psychological warning written by Jung about an overwhelming, terrifying cosmic drive he called abraxas. Over the course of this explainer, we're going to figure out exactly what this entity actually is and why Jung was convinced that our sanity literally depends on understanding it. Okay, let's jump right into Section 1, The Secret of Jung's Red Book. To put this all in perspective, take a look at this timeline. Way back in 1916, Jung privately printed this strange, tiny booklet called The Seven Sermons to the Dead. And I mean, private. He only gave it to a very, very select few friends who he thought were, actually ready to understand it. For the rest of his life, right up until his death in 1961, the full, expanded version of this work just sat locked away. It was this massive, beautifully illustrated manuscript known as the Red Book, or Liber Novus. Crazy enough, it wasn't until 2009, almost a full century after he started it, that this monumental piece of work was finally released to the public. Now, when the world finally got to read Liber Novus, people quickly realized it wasn't just the rambling diary of a man losing his mind, which, honestly, some people had feared. Notice that word right there, psychocosmology. Basically, Jung was using the ancient framework of Gnosticism, which was this early, highly mystical alternative to Orthodox Christianity, to map out the entire human soul. For Jung, the psyche itself was the true source of all knowledge, and he was using these ancient myths to explain how the modern mind actually works. Moving on to Section 2, who is the Demiurge Abraxas? First things first, we've got to ground ourselves by defining this word demiurge. It actually comes from Plato, and it originally just meant craftsman. But in Gnostic thought, the demiurge is basically the architect who built the physical universe. But here's the massive catch. He is not the ultimate supreme god. He's this subordinate intermediate being. So he's incredibly powerful for sure, but he entirely lacks ultimate divine wisdom. In a way, you can think of him as the blind builder of our material prison. In his extremely private Black Book diaries, Jung wrote something genuinely haunting. He said, "Abraxas is to be feared. Therefore, it was liberation when he separated from me." That is intense, right? Jung is describing a moment of profound psychological separation here. He realized that this demiurge, who he decided to name Abraxas, is an inescapable, totally overwhelming power that every single one of us has operating deep inside of us. So you're probably wondering, what does this actually mean for you and me? Well, psychologically speaking, Abraxas is the blind, relentless drive of the cosmos. He is that deep unconscious force that just pushes us into action. He forces us to create, forces us to consume, and forces souls into the physical world. Basically, Abraxas is the raw, unfiltered engine of reality, and he operates completely outside of our rational, everyday control. Let's break down what this actually looks like. As you can see, Abraxas is the lord of the world. He merges light and dark perfectly. He's equally creative and destructive. He's hypnotic, he's infinitely powerful, and most importantly, he exists totally beyond human moral categories like good or evil. Have you ever felt totally swept up by, say, a massive collective societal movement? Or maybe an overwhelming personal compulsion that you just couldn't rationally stop? If so, you've literally felt the psychological power of Abraxas. Which brings us to Section 3, the end of the old god image. Take a look at this stark comparison. On the left, we've got traditional monotheism. Now, Jung argued that Orthodox religions accidentally combined the ultimate, transcendent perfect god with the blind, often brutal demiurge. This created a terribly confusing image of a god who is supposedly all-loving, but who also seems to permit immense, horrific suffering. Because everyday people couldn't resolve this impossible tension, we arrive at the right side of this slide, the modern crisis. Modern society essentially threw its hands up and rejected this contradictory god entirely, and that has led to unprecedented secularism, atheism, and a deep collective loss of meaning. Jung actually laid out a prophecy for our new age because of this. In Liber Novas, he recorded a vision of the future divided into 3 distinct periods. First up is war, the unleashing of visible physical chaos, and he literally saw this manifesting in World War I and II. Second is magic. This is a hidden, darker period of intense ideological and technological manipulation. And finally, religion. But he meant a newly realized, authentic spirituality that, frankly, hasn't fully emerged yet. He actually connected this massive psychological shift to astrology, specifically the transition from the age of Pisces into the age of Aquarius. Jung warned that until a brand new, authentic spiritual image fully takes shape within the human mind, our society is kind of doomed to navigate an epoch of extreme chaos, violence, and total confusion. And honestly, we're living right in the messy middle of that transition today. All right, moving into section 4, Feigns and the Self. This is fascinating. Look at the core tension in Jung's famous 1916 mandala, the Systema Mundi Totius. At the very bottom, you have Abrakas, depicted as a terrifying serpent lion. He represents the absolute ruler of our lower physical drives. But then, at the exact opposite pole, at the very top, there's a winged egg with a divine child inside named Phanes. This represents the new god image just waiting to hatch. Jung is showing us visually that the only way to balance out the chaotic Demiurge pulling us down is to awaken this divine child pulling us up. In Jung's world, that divine child is what he calls the self. Think of it as the ultimate symbol of total human wholeness. Jung's radical proposition here was that the new God image isn't going to come down from the sky, and it isn't coming from a church either. It resides squarely within your own soul. It's the ultimate psychological anchor. He actually wrote down something his own soul supposedly said to him in his diary. It said, "You have the one God in you, wonderfully beautiful and kind, who leads you among all the darkness and mortal fears of the terrible Abraxas." I mean, just imagine the profound peace that comes with that realization. Even while the whole world around you is completely consumed by the chaotic, crazy drives of the Demiurge, you possess an inner, immovable star that can guide you right through the darkness. Let's get very practical with section 5, liberation from the clutches of the Demiurge. So where is Abraxas today? Jung warned us that the Demiurge isn't some ancient fantasy. It traps us right now through our extroverted obsession with the external world. We are basically worshiping the terrifying power of Abraxas through destructive, militant political ideologies that demand our absolute, unquestioning obedience. And perhaps even more dangerously, we are held captive by what Jung called the magically sparkling web of modern technology. Think about the hypnotic, infinite scroll of the digital world. It is constantly hijacking our unconscious drives. How do we actually free ourselves? Well, Jung gave us a roadmap toward individuation, which is just the process of becoming your true, undivided self. Step 1. Recognize the reality of the Demiurge. We have to stop pretending the world is entirely rational or perfectly good. It's not. Step 2. Turn inward to access your essential core, the self. You literally have to disconnect from all the external noise to find that inner star. And step 3. Tolerate the tension of opposites. Don't run away from the darkness, but don't blindly chase the light either. You have to stand firmly and consciously right between them. And that loops us right back to that incredible, paradoxical piece of advice from Jung. Not to resist him means liberation. If you fight the cosmos, if you desperately try to repress your unconscious drives or control the totally uncontrollable world of Abraxas, you are going to be crushed. True psychological liberation doesn't come from futile resistance. It comes from a radical acceptance of the world exactly as it is, while firmly anchoring yourself in the divine core of who you are. So I'll leave you with this one final, undeniable question to chew on. Are you ready to face Abraxas and actually find your true self? Because the old world is fading, the new one is fiercely chaotic, and the only safe harbor left is the uncharted territory of your very own psyche. I really hope this explainer has given you the map you need to start that journey. Keep learning, keep looking inward, and we'll see you next time.